Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. And Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Promoter 101. Yeah, Promoter 101.
Adam Kornfeld. I'm at Artist Group International, AGI in New York, and I'm on Promoter 101.
It's time for the Promoter 101 podcast. Joining me on this historic episode 169, the W. Luke Pierce man himself.
Dan, I am glad to be here because today on the Promoter 101 podcast, we've got a featured interview with Minneapolis Historic Theater Group's Rick Hansen back on the podcast. He's here to keep us in the loop of all things performing arts in the business of Minny, Dan, the city of Minny. I know he loves it when we call it that.
CAA's Lee Goforth turns the tables on us.
Episode 169 of Promoter 101 starts right now.
This is Christine Marshall from CAA, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Have you missed any of the past Promoter 101 episodes? Well, we got you hooked up. Just go to promoter101.net or wherever you find the podcast and search for any of our past historic episodes. This week, however, we recommend you reach out for episode 99.
Episode 99 was a doozy. We had CAA's Brian Hill on the podcast. He broke down the world of concert touring and country music.
Jam Productions' Nick Miller talks about booking some of the hottest venues in the country, focused on Chicago, Illinois, of course, the home of Portillo's.
Of course. And we had 3 questions with Live Nation's Brad Domash on the podcast.
Speaking of Chicago, hey now. If you've got a free minute, you can always drop us a review, subscribe, tell your friends about the podcast. What could it hurt?
Hey, this is Rob Zaffarelli.
Patty Ann Tarleton.
Paul Lord.
Phil Rodriguez.
Rick Greenstein.
Donatas Nachayos.
Drew Pellet.
Rich Mills.
Sasha Bombaji.
Seth Hurwitz. Steve Martin.
Whitney Bond.
This is Trip Brown.
Wayne Forte.
Steve Zapp.
Trevor Solomon.
Live on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
It's time to turn the tables. It's time to turn the tables.
Leading off on our interviews on this, the 169th episode of Promoter 101, we're going to kick things off with a session of Turn the Tables. Joining us now from creative artist agency Lee Goforth.
What's your question, Mr. Lee?
Dan, I've been wondering this. You've done a million of these interviews. You're coming to a close on this point in your life, but I'm curious who your top 3. If you could pick a top 3 interviews you've done over the years, who would they be?
Wow, that's, all of the interviews are like my children, and I love them all equally. No, Shep Gordon at his place in Maui was amazing. Like, you're with a rock star when you're with Shep. That was so amazing. Jay Marciano and Aspen would have to be number 2. Like, to give that guy a microphone and be able to pick his brain was one of the most amazing experiences. And the build up to that, he was so back and forth. We were texting each other for a year with ideas and questions and meeting, and just a full year of just being able to like pick his brain, knowing that this was going to happen. And we didn't even know there was going to be a podcast at that point. It was just like, wow, this is amazing. I can ask my competitor, who probably doesn't even see me as a competitor, like anything I want, and he's fucking answering in real time. It's like the coolest thing. And then probably the best was Rapino, because it was like, I felt like I won the golden ticket. Like, it was a Willy Wonka moment for sure. It was like, as an independent promoter, being able to ask the biggest promoter in the world anything I wanted for an hour. I'm just like, this is cool. You can't leave. You can't run. You can't not answer. And he did. He was so forthcoming. And there was just a packed room of people like sitting there listening to every fucking thing. It was like to see Irving Azoff on the side of the wall, Mark Cuban, like everybody just listening to Rapino, and like me being the only one that could prod him. I was like, how fucking cool is that? So yeah, those would be probably my favorite 3. Do you have a favorite one?
I mean, come on. Mitch Rose, 100%.
That was a good session. That was a really good session. He was very forthcoming. And it was kind of funny because there were a couple things afterwards. I was like, do you want me to pull this or this or this? He's like, fuck it, I said it.
There's nothing more. Anyone that knows Mitch, that was the most Mitch Rose interview ever. He's honest. He's direct. There's no bullshit. And that's why we love him. And that's why he is who he is.
Thanks, Lee, so much. We'll have Lee back for a full interview this coming Monday on episode 170.
Looking forward to that. If you want to play 3 questions with us or turn the tables, time's a ticking. Get down to it. We've only got about 30 episodes of this podcast left. So Get on your computer, get on your phone, send us an email right now to steiny@promoter101.net. Let us know what 3 questions you're dying to ask or what turn the tables you'd pose to us.
The email is steiny@promoter101.net. We're waiting for your email now.
This is Jeremy Holgerson from United Talent Agency, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101 Flashbacks.
Episode 92.
Mark Norman.
You've evolved as a buyer from being a concert promoter in a market to being a concert promoter that could be moved from one market to another and evolved to learn the relationships and see what carries and wouldn't from not only just a different market, but a different country. And now globally, you're buying tours.
Yeah, absolutely. I started as Riley's number 2 in...
Riley O'Connor
in Periscope. Actually, I started before that in my own company in Victoria where I was partnering with Periscope or doing a couple of my own things. I did a lot of bus tours and chartering planes and ferries and buses and that kind of stuff in the early 80s, and then started doing local shows.
When you mean chartering buses, you're talking about like special events package kind of things, destination things?
On the Stones tour in 81, I think it was a Jovan tour, I managed to score 150 tickets and put them together with hotels and buses and sell packages out of my kitchen to people in Victoria to go to the show. I just wanted to be able to afford to go to the show myself, and I ended up making like $4 or $5 grand. And I went, wow, this is cool. And I moved from there to chartering the entire ferry and 26 bus loads, or I'd charter jets so that at the end of a show in Vancouver, we could fly home at night, because you couldn't get home from Vancouver at night because of the ferries. They stop at 10 o'clock. So I'd charter -7 jets, or turboprops they were, and we'd put a party on at the airport and we'd shuttle people across. The flight's like 20 minutes. Actually, with Riley O'Connor, I went into Riley's office and said, Riley, I can make you a bunch of money. I'll partner this with you. You put up the tickets. If I don't sell, I get to return the tickets, and we'll go out and do this and make a lot of money.
But you were creating a different package with it. You guys weren't just reselling tickets. You guys were creating this amazing, different experience that no one else is offering. You put the whole thing together.
You couldn't, the whole premise was they were really hot shows, and you couldn't get back to Victoria at night. You'd have to stay in a hotel and all that stuff, take a day or 2 off work. But I could get you back and get you great seats. The first big one after the Stones was the Jackson tour. I was 23 years old. I got a meeting with the president of the BC Ferry Corporation and sat down and said, I'd like to rent a ferry. And he's like, what?
Doesn't seem like an everyday request.
No, it had never been done before. And so he told me the price. I went, okay, fine. And I said, I have security, blah, blah, blah. And he let me do it. I think it was like $25,000 we had to guarantee to rent this ferry.
So it was a pretty big risk, especially if you extrapolate the time and the day.
It was really big.
Because what, you'd figure that now, that's what, 80 grand?
Yeah. I was 23. I didn't have fucking money. That was interesting. A couple of weird things. When I go back to the Stones thing, I was working at a television station at the time. I studied television production. So I was some sort of technician at that particular time, don't know where I was. And I managed to score these tickets through John Bauer Concert Company. And I told the anchor, who was a friend of mine.
So Bauer Kinnear?
Yeah, Bauer Kinnear. That I'd got these tickets and I was going to sell these package. And the next thing I know, I'm at work the next day and the pager's going off all day. Mark Norman, come to the front. You got a phone call, blah, blah, blah. Unbeknownst to me, the anchor had told the local print gossip columnist, and this kid had got these tickets for the Stones. And all these people, these random people were phoning me at work saying, I hear you have tickets to the Stones. I want to buy them. So I told these people, well, come over to my house tonight. It's $150 each, I think they were. I can't, with a hotel and bus and ferry, the whole deal. So on the way home, I went and bought a $2 receipt book. And I sat at my kitchen table as all of these random people that I didn't know came and gave me $300. And I wrote them out a
handwritten receipt.
That's all. I didn't have the tickets. I didn't have the hotel. I didn't have anything. And then I had to go down to Seattle and get it all together. And it all worked out. And that was the start of the company. It was called Magic Bus.
Selling futures.
Yeah, man.
Hi, my name's Ed Bicknell, and I'm Promoter 101, and I'm in room 24 something, and I've got an inside leg measurement of 32 inches and a cup size of 31A.
Tweets of the week.
It's Thursday, so it's time for some tweets of the week. Start off here, Dan. People seem to believe cool shit is happening backstage.
Well, nothing really could be further from the truth. Actuality, everything that happens in front of the house is really the show. So backstage, it's kind of just like, one of those Hollywood sets where everything's just being held up by sticks and stuff. Just nothing beautiful to see back there.
Potemkinville, Dan. Potemkinville. That's what it is.
There it is.
Amazed how loosely agents use the term star.
Respectfully disagree. He is not a star, sir. He's barely a name we'll remember after this week.
Dan, do you care to share the names on this one? When a confirmed tour adds support handled by your least favorite agent on the planet.
Is it too late to pass on the show? And no, Luke, you know we don't name names here. We don't do that. Keeping it classy, baby. Keeping it classy.
That'll just about do it for Tweets of the Week. Dan is always on Twitter. You can join the conversation. Follow him at The Jew.
I am The Jew.
Jim Runge, tour manager for Imagine Dragons, and we're on Promoter 101.
Coming up in our featured interview of this podcast, very pleased that we're joined by a very good friend of this podcast, frequent Aspen Live conference goer, man about town in the Twin Cities from the Historic Theater Groups. That's the group overlooking all of the major theaters in Minneapolis, from the Pantages to the State to the Orpheum. We're going to welcome Rick Hansen on the podcast, talking about all things Minny.
Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Rick Hansen. Thank you so much. So, you started way back in Colorado, in a mountain town. It sounds like the beginning of South Park for me. But you didn't kill Kenny. Give us the story.
I did not kill Kenny. I went to school at the University of Colorado at Denver with a 4-year music business degree there, which is pretty awesome at the time because there weren't too many of those.
CU Denver.
Yep. So I went there and then did a bunch of internships. Did one with Partners in Music with Casey Verbeck and Yonder Mountains Management Company.
That'd be Yonder Mountain String Band, right?
Correct.
It's the same Yonder Mountain.
Or just Yonder. And then after that, got a job out in Breckenridge, being the director of marketing for the Breckenridge Music Festival.
Sounds like a pretty big title.
It was, but it was a small festival, mainly classical, and then you'd fill it in with about 15 to 20 non-classical concerts.
Okay, and you did that for 3 years or something?
Did it for 3 years, but after 6 months, the boss retired, and I was the only one with talent buying or live music industry experience, and so I just kind of got thrown into the fire and got to be the talent buyer at 24.
All right, so you're buying talent, all sorts of talent, different acts, Robert Earl King, things like that.
Yeah, and, Imelda May and Gaelic Storm and Pat Green and Leo Kottke and all that good stuff.
But Robert Earl King being the coolest of the cool.
That was a really good show. It was a great show. I loved that show.
Particularly Robert Earl King.
Yeah, Leo Kottke too, and Richie Havens. Those were great too. But yeah, and so then wanted to come back home to Minnesota, where I'm from, and got a job with the Minnesota Orchestra. Stayed there for a tiny bit. Wasn't my bag. And then got a job with the Historic Theater Group with the State Orpheum and Pantages Theaters in Minnesota.
Why wasn't it your bag?
There was a lot going on there. During that time, I was there for 3 years. And during a year and a half of that time, the musicians were locked out for the Minnesota Orchestra.
Holy shit.
So for a full year and a half, we had to book shows.
Somebody wasn't reading their mission statement.
Correct. And so we had to book shows and then cancel them and then book shows and then cancel them, which made us look great.
It's like the hokey pokey of booking.
Exactly. But we had to do it to prove to the musicians and board that we were still doing our jobs while we were waiting for them to get done with the contract negotiations and done with the lockout. So it made us look real good with all the agents and everyone. And it was just time to get out of there. And a funny story is the fact that the first day that I started my job with the Historic Theater Group was the day that the lockout ended.
Wow. So your timing is just, or maybe you triggered it. Maybe it was like, shit, Rick is gone. We need to stop fucking around and get this done. Who else could we lose?
Exactly.
It was you, man. It wasn't ironic. You were the tipping point.
There could have been a final tipping point, but because they lost so many people on staff there during that lockout, it was really a shame. But I mean, all in all, the Minnesota Orchestra is one of the top in the world, and it's really great to see what they've done since then. But that was just a bleak time, and it was not fun to be there at that time.
All right. So you're a theater guy now, a venue man.
I am a venue guy, correct. And so I have 3 theaters. I got the Orpheum, which is 2,600 cap, State, which is 2,100 cap, and the Pantages, which is 1,000, all on the same street within a block and a half of each other.
And in the spirit of Chief Seattle, who can own a tree? Who can own a rock? Who can own a mountain? But you have 3 theaters.
We have 3 theaters.
You corporate fuck you.
It's a lot of fun.
I tease the talented. So you work from the theater side, and you balance what is Broadway and a very cool music series. So you work with all the big promoters. You got the First Avenue guys. You got the Live Nation guys. You got some AEG business. You've got some Outback and NS2. And everybody kind of runs in your market and does business with you guys.
Absolutely. We have a ball doing that. And so my boss books all the Broadway, and that's through Broadway Across America and John Gore organization. And then I, like you said, make sure that everyone else comes through the venues and we fill it out with music and comedy and all that good stuff. And we get everyone through there. And it's kind of fun to play Switzerland because I don't need to pitch people against other people. I just kind of get to have fun and try to get as many shows as possible.
Now, are there any things that you don't want in your venue that doesn't fit your mission statement?
The only thing that doesn't work, and it's because it just gets too loud and people want to be going nuts and dancing and like going nuts for, is a heavy hip hop crowd. I mean, we've had some good hip hop shows in there, some great R&B shows, but when it's, I don't know, like if Run the Jewels was in there, it would not fit. It would just...
You kind of need an open floor venue for that.
Exactly.
Like, Palace seems like the right play for that show.
Absolutely. It would be the perfect place for that play. But that's about all. Everything else kind of works in there. Lots of folk, lots of old classic rock, lots of new rock, bluegrass, a little bit of country, a little bit of rock and roll.
Right. And I guess I should also mention that you guys do business with Jam and you do business with the First Avenue crew. So you really do get business from everybody.
Absolutely. I mean, the Jam guys and the First Ave guys are some of my favorite people. And we have a really tight-knit group in Minneapolis. And we kind of are all competitors, but all get along for the most part.
So it's cold as shit in the winters there.
Yeah.
Does that affect people coming out in the wintertime, or are people just used to it? Because you guys have got those awesome indoor walkways between venues that are over the city, which is great.
Yep, we have the Skyways so that people can come downtown and park and literally be 2.5 miles away and walk through a Skyway system like pretty much like a rat and like a maze and get to the venues. But we had some interesting stuff. Like when Neil Young did his 3 acoustic shows, he did one at each one of our venues this winter. It was negative 22 out. And he had 4 trucks of gear, and we had to store them in certain places at one venue until it was warm enough where we could bring it to the next venue because it was that cold outside.
Well, that takes some seriously good production crew to figure out those moving pieces and logistics.
Absolutely. We have some of the best production guys out there. 3 different theaters, 3 different production managers and teams, and they were phenomenal working together, and they all get along really well. But yeah, those shows were all sold out, and it was a jam show, and everyone was just having a great time with it.
All right, so let's do a little background now that we're talking about the theaters and we've brought up your history to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Pantages is about 1,000 cap.
Yep, 1,000 cap.
Okay, and it's a gorgeous sit-down room.
Yep.
Comedy works well there with music shows. I had some great success with Puddles the Clown there, Puddles Pity Party.
Yep.
Okay, and let's talk about the State is what, 25?
2150.
Beautiful performing arts Broadway house.
That's not our Broadway house. That'd be the Orpheum. But the State is where we do where I kind of have most of our shows that come through there. It's a great big room, easy to get in and out. It's Skyway connected to parking. 4 restaurants are in the same building. And it's just an easy theater to get in and out of. That's where we do most of our rock shows.
You were talking about the Orpheum, which is your Broadway house, which is what, 2,900?
26, 27, around there, yeah. That's a gorgeous one. We just redid all the seats in there a couple years ago. It's awesome. It's a really beautiful theater. And fun fact, Bob Dylan used to own it in the 80s. And then he came back and played there 3 or 4 years ago, which was really kind of cool.
Does he have roots in your market?
Well, I mean, he's from Duluth, which is 3 hours north. That's where he was born and raised. He wrote a bunch of songs at the U of M campus, and then he moved to New York. See, he came back in the 80s, and him and his brother owned the Orpheum for about 12 years, I think.
So you're working in a very competitive business with lots and lots of volume. You've got another 1,000-seater up the road. You've got the Orway Center in St. Paul. The Palace clearly can be a competitive thing. It seems like the First Avenue could kind of compete with the Pantages for some shows, but probably not that often.
Not that often, because obviously First Ave is GA and is a seated venue, but they just bought the Fitzgerald in St. Paul, which is pretty much the exact same cap and a seated venue. It's just across the road.
So game on, war, motherfucker.
No, I'm such good friends with them, and we talk all the time. We get along so well that, I mean, like I said, I still do a bunch of shows with them throughout the year in all 3 of our theaters, and it's competitive, but it's also friendly.
Do you ever present shows in your venues yourself?
Not me personally, but our sister company, the Hennepin Theater Trust, does. And so they buy a bunch of shows each year. And sometimes there's just some back and forth on if things will work and if there's good deal points or not. But for the most part, they're on their own.
Who do you wish played the room?
The Palace got one that I really wanted this year. I really wanted to get Bob Weir and the Wolf Brothers in there, and the Palace got it, and I went to the show, and it was a great show.
But wouldn't you prefer to get to watch and relax and enjoy the show and not have to go deal with problems when they occur?
That's very true. That's a really good point. And I much prefer going to First Ave or the Palace and seeing shows and relaxing and being able to hang out with friends rather than worry about what's going on backstage and all that good stuff. That's a good point.
All right. So lessons for people that are trying to get into the business, some of the young people coming up behind you, if they want to work for a world-class venue company like you do, what could you recommend? What is the advice from an older Rick Hansen that he would offer a younger Rick Hansen just starting out?
I would say get to learn lots of different sides of the business. Having to do some of the running stuff and some of the work that I just didn't like, it gave me more respect for the people that were doing it. I would say get to know some of the production staff, learn what they're doing, get to know agents, managers, everything, meet as many people as you can, and just, I would say, just experience and do internships, do things that you're just going to learn from and get to know all different sides of the business.
I feel like doing like, who can make a rainbow? Put it in a dish. You're the candy man of venues. You've got all the best rooms.
They're not all the best rooms, but they're 3 of my favorite rooms, absolutely.
Well, that should absolutely be the motto. We have not the best rooms, but some pretty good ones. We're better than mediocre in Minneapolis. Don't call us Minny.
I don't want to brag, but I mean, we do have the best venues in Minneapolis.
I don't want to brag, but simply facts are facts. And our venues are factually buildings that stand up that music is played in. That, sir, is a truth.
For seated theaters, absolutely. You hate that I keep being so fucking Minnesotan, don't you?
Hey, if the cheese is fucking right, man, bring it, you know? You're in a football market. It's cold as shit. You've got a very diverse, wealthy market. You guys get a lot of great shows. And at some point, though, you're still Chicago's little bitch sister.
Oh, that's what people like to think of it as. But I mean, I like to think of it as one of the best hidden secrets because then you don't have to live in that big of a town. You can.
But you guys are a big town. You're like a top 20 market.
Yeah, we are. But it doesn't feel that way when you're there. It feels like a smaller market and we still get all the awesome shows.
Okay, so you are the 15th biggest market in the country by DMA.
Yeah.
Top 10% of markets. You guys are one of the biggest markets in the country. When they're handing out dates, you guys should literally be the 15th market to get a show.
Absolutely. And we do, showing by our volume that's come through, especially the past.
Probably doesn't hurt that you're right in the middle of the fucking country, too.
Exactly. But I mean, looking at it even from back in the day and hearing other older promoters talk about it in Minneapolis, they used to have to fight for it back in the 80s and early 90s. They had to fight for shows because they'd go from, I believe the routing was usually from Chicago to Denver and then out to California, whatever, but they would always skip over Minneapolis. But the promoters in this town have done a great job just building the scene, and it's so much fun to be there.
Okay, and let's talk about that. I mean, you guys are a major market, as we've just discovered. You're right in the middle. And at the same time, you guys are kind of indie dominated. AG doesn't have an office there. Live Nation does. Jam Satellites out of Chicago. But you've got Rose Presents, Sue McLean and Associates still there doing their thing. Compass was big in their day. Rich Best comes from that market. So a lot of people cut their teeth in that beautiful city.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of history there. And it's really cool to talk with a lot of these people and to learn the history. And
great rock market, great country market, great urban market.
And a huge comedy market. It's huge comedy market. We've been the biggest influx of shows for us. The theaters have been just tons and tons of comedy coming in now.
Good people that like to laugh.
Exactly.
What's the goal of Rick Hansen moving forward in the business? What's your hopes, your dreams?
I love these theaters. I want to stay at these theaters for a while and maybe eventually get a new title, take over the theaters once people start retiring, stuff like that. But I would love to run these theaters for a while. They're really close to my heart. I used to grow up going to these theaters and I love it.
The Emperor of the Trust. I think that'd be a good name.
Ooh, that could be fun. That could be
Rick Hansen, Emperor of the Trust.
Dun, dun, dun.
Here, only on Promoter 101. Thank you so much, Mr. Rick Hansen from Minny on Promoter 101.
Thanks.
Kind of want to book a Wycliffe Jean show right now in one of Rick's venues. Minny, it's all about the money. He just hates when we say Minny, which is why we've just focused on it this week. Anyway, great to have Rick Hansen right here on Promoter 101 talking about Minny.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101?
Promoter 101.
The podcast.
With Steiny and the Peters.
Hey, that'll do it. Episode 169 of Promoter 101 in the bag. Thank you to everyone that tuned into this podcast and to our wonderful guest from Historic Theater Group in Minneapolis, Mr. Rick Hansen. Note, I didn't say Minny there. And from CA, Lee Goforth, you were both amazing and wonderful guests. We're looking forward to having one of you back on the podcast, maybe next week, Dan.
Ooh, somebody looking far into the future. A whole 4 days.
Yeah.
Until then, we're wishing you sold out shows for the week to come. Cheers!
Call your mother.
This is Jim King from AEG Presents, and I'm on Promoter 101.